And at this stage, Australia is not being targeted by Donald Trump's tariff plan, but some experts believe it could still have an impact here. And to discuss this, I'm joined by economist Chris Richardson. Chris, thanks so much for joining me. Donald Trump has announced these plans to target China, Mexico and Canada with import taxes. Is that something Australians should be worried about?
Australia is a small country that sells to a big world. As it so happens, we don't sell a whole lot to the US and they don't buy a whole lot from us. So it's not the direct threat. The risk is more that our main trading partner, China, does take a hit from these tariffs. Tariffs are basically a tax, and the bulk of the cost of that tax will fall on American families, but it will have a big impact around the world as businesses rapidly change how they do things.
And could it push up the prices that Aussies pay for things?
It could. Again, we're not so much directly in the firing line, and some things may go down in price here. You know, you're thinking of the likes of electric vehicles out of China, already hard hit by taxes from a number of nations around the world. They may become, if anything, cheaper here. So there will be some things going the other way. But basically, it does mean higher prices in the US and higher prices around the world. And central banks will just be a little bit wary around that. They won't, after this extended period of inflation that we've had, like to see another push to prices. So they're going to be careful around the pace at which they cut rates from here.
Right, so it could be dangerous from the perspective of global inflation.
It is, and you know, there's as that package you just had mentioned, there's many moving parts here, and not entirely sure where they land or what happens first. That uncertainty is part of the juggle that we'll have over the next few months.
The RBA governor suggested that China could find other markets and that actually Australia might benefit from that. What do you think of that suggestion?
Yeah, and so to be clear, chances are that the announced policies of the Trump administration will hurt the world economy and the Australian economy. But the direct impact here, probably not too bad. Some of the indirect impacts may be more of an issue. But you would hope Australia, as the Reserve Bank governor noted, not particularly in the firing line.
This week, the latest domestic inflation figures were released, showing prices rose 2.1% in the 12 months to October. But the measure that the RBA goes by with these things, underlying inflation, is still not where it needs to be. Can you explain where we're at and what you think needs to happen before we get a rate cut?
So the measure that the Reserve Bank focuses on, underlying inflation, still at 3.5% in that monthly figure. The monthly figures aren't enormously reliable yet, particularly the first month of the quarter, like October is. So economists are being a little careful around any extra information there. It more comes down to what the Reserve Bank is saying, and they updated us as recently as yesterday, basically saying that they are going to be careful. One of the reasons why we just mentioned the Trump changes that may be in the offing. But the other reason is inflation in Australia is proving just a little bit sticky. Now economists and markets are pretty much lined up saying that they don't expect the first rate cut in Australia to occur until May or later. It's a complicated world, could happen. But the expectation increasingly is later and fewer rate cuts when they do arrive.
Looking more and more likely to happen after the federal election, isn't it? Thank you so much. That's economist Chris Richardson.